All right, what is up, psychedelic gypsy queens? Salutations. I am here with Caroline Burckle, former American competitive swimmer in freestyle, Olympic bronze medalist in Beijing. She's co-founder of Rise Athletes and is a fashion grad from FIDM in LA. So she sketches lots of fashion, and she is a goddess warrior. And I wanted to sit down with Caroline because she has such an amazing journey and she's on that spiritual path of awakening and figuring out where she's at in this universe and who she is. And I love it. I'm so like a part of her journey and I think I can really relate. And so welcome, Caroline.
Thank you. I met you at the perfect time too, because it's all happening. And
Yes.
so I appreciate your journey and you sharing everything that you do. So I'm really excited.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I just like you're such a little fireball. So I know I had to have you on. And it's funny because people have told me, they're like, man, you and Caroline would totally get along. Like you need, so I was like, okay, I need to call this girl. I need to like get on the phone with her. And yeah, it's cool. It's super rad.
Yeah,
I wanted
sweet.
to ask, right from the get go. So where are you right now in your life?
Yes. So physically, I'm in Redondo Beach, California. So Los Angeles, which I guess you could call it. And I own a business with my friend first, Olympian second, and business partner third, Rebecca Stoney. And it's called Rise Athletes. So we run a business where we have Olympians from all over the world that come into our program, train sports psychology, and learn about their own experiences, and then deliver mentoring to youth athletes from all over the world. So it's all online, kind of like what we're doing right now. So I spend a lot of time on the computer just like this. And it's cool because the program is for 13 to 18-year-olds. They don't have to be, looking to go to the Olympics, but they're just wanting to get better in their mental game for their sport and in turn their life. So it's really special, dear to my heart. It's had its 3 years of building. And so yeah, that's what I'm creating with that. And yeah, I do it from here in my house. So that's kind of cool. Yeah.
So you can be in your undies and like working on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just in my strike bra and shorts right now,
Of course, I believe that. Um,
Yeah.
so that's really cool. I didn't know that you actually trained the Olympic athletes coming in to like kind of unpack their experience with being super driven.
Yeah. So one of the things that is like not a secret with Olympic athletes and with any professional athlete or anybody that's changing their sport or a job or a transition of any sort is that it's freaking hard. And so not only are they changing it if they're retiring, but some of them that are still competing are like, hey, I want to have significance outside of my sport. And while I do love to, coach or to do XYZ, I want to give back in what I'm actually doing and what I've learned from this. So they come to us and it's like this entire learning. It's a 6-week course, this entire course on how to cultivate an athlete mindset for these youth athletes, but really they're learning and reflecting on their entire experience. And like a lot of the exercises and things they go through are their experiences that they can reflect on throughout that process. So it's really like a mutually beneficial relationship, which is awesome because it solves like 2 things, right? Like they have this place to go to learn, to grow, to give back, to learn more by teaching. And then these athletes can sit there and say, cool, I have an Olympian as a big sister or big brother, and I can learn from them. So yeah, it's really cool.
And
It's,
so how do you
yeah.
connect the mentors to the mentees?
So a lot of them get their own, which is like they'll find their own athletes, which is cool because they have like their connections and then they have more of a personal relationship. Otherwise, they just come through our website or through learning about us somehow, through our in-person events and things like that. And then they just apply and they become a part of the program. So we'll match them based on their survey and the things they want to work on and their sport. Like if a sport's specific to the Olympian, we'll
Right.
match them. But if it's like, hey, so-and-so struggling with this, and we know that this Olympian has had so much practice in that specific thing, regardless of if it's an injury or plateau, we're like, hey, you guys have an intro call, see if it fits. And then we go from there. So usually it fits.
Yeah.
It's like, sweet, like everybody's going through the same things at some point, so.
Absolutely. And that's what I love about this like experience that I'm going through is that like oftentimes when we go through a hard time, we have this feeling of isolation, like, man, I'm like a failure, or like I didn't do enough, or all these things start going through your head. But when we actually reach out and connect with another human being, you're like, oh my God, they went through the same thing, or they have the same feelings. And it's such a like it's so universal, these like feelings, these ups and downs of life. It's like the air that we breathe, right? It all connects us. And I find that to be that community, that sense of community that you're building is just so powerful.
Yeah, and that's how we started, because Rebecca and I would be voice memoing each other back in 2012. She swam through 2012, and my brother swam in 2012 Olympics. So I didn't feel like I ended until he was done with that part of it, because that was his transition. He just stopped right after. So we were both like, I had been in denial, which I can get into later, but in 2012, we both started talking like, who are we? Like, what are we doing? We're so confused. And um, it feels like this just identity crisis and this huge problem that we now have to solve. And we were viewing it in this way. And so we came together over that, which can be seen as something, not great. Coming together over pain is hard, right? It's like, you don't want to exacerbate it and just have it like explode. So we were like, what can we do with this? Like, what can we make out of this? Like, how can we create something to benefit this feeling that people have so they can continue on, versus just going and finding something to bide the time with a 9 to 5, or finding something that they can do. Because truth be told, when you're done competing, you just get cut, like things just are cut off. Like it's better now, but back when we finished, it was like, bye.
Yeah.
Great
Thanks.
knowing you for 25 years, and also see you later. And it was just like, I just had this relationship for 20 years, and now I just was broken up with, and it's horrifying. So that's why we started it, is to build that community and to create that sense of significance that we didn't even know we had ourselves, but we were determined to find it and just trust in that.
Mm,
So yeah, we had no idea what the path would lead. No clue. Like
yeah.
at first it wasn't even understood.
Right. Like, so you literally created something out of this transformative pain and
Yeah.
forged a whole new path. Cause I haven't seen anything like Rise Athletes before, like in terms of like
Yeah.
connecting people who have been there, done that to the up and coming. So you're like
Yeah.
it's very grassroots, and you're changing young athletes on such a beginner level, like it's really cool. I really like that.
Yeah. Well, and I would have loved that if I was 15.
Absolutely. Instead
You
of just like
know?
deferring to my parents who are like, well, I don't know, like do better, like
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
And now that they love phones, it makes it so much easier. It's like, okay, we can all just flip open the screen and it's normal. Like, whereas to our generation, it may be kind of weird and annoying. It's like, oh, it's not like as much connection.
Yes.
Unfortunately, that's like connection for them. Like, I know it's not right, because connection should be human interaction,
Yeah.
but it's also, to that generation, that's what they know. Like, connecting is on the phone and on the screen, and that's okay. We should leverage that and use that to our advantage in a positive way, versus like comparison on Instagram and social media and all these things. So yeah.
It's more, you're creating some realness. I was
Yeah.
gonna ask you, so your career, your experience, and this is going to be probably a tough question. What lessons did you take away from, like, when did you start swimming?
Mm. I was like 4.
Wow. And then
My
you
mom,
ended at,
yeah, and I ended at 24,
okay.
something like that.
Yeah.
I ended like 9, 10 years ago.
Okay.
And it's insane that it's been that long. It feels like 5 minutes, because when I ended, I felt like I was 21 again. You know, I'm like, or not 21, but I felt like when I ended, it was like, okay, now what? You know,
Right.
I feel like I'm getting my driver's license. Like, I feel like I'm just learning everything all over again. And I should be so much further ahead than what I am.
Uh-huh.
And, I, so I was never, I was not really a, like savage, like out to get people kind of athlete. I had this soft, um, confidence about me that I just knew I was going to kick ass. I just knew that I was going to be good. But I also was I was a huge people pleaser and still am working through that
Mm.
process. And so a lot of my journey, I think the biggest lesson that I learned now is that I had a lot of shame around my success and like, was it for me, or like, what was I doing it for? And like, you know, what was it? And I think that I'm learning that whole process now of, okay, let's break down like why you did what you did, and what kind of athlete were you? What kind of human are you? You know, and why is there shame around that? And this is like so deep. I can go like 20 different directions with this right now. But yeah, I was a silent, confident killer in a way. And it feels weird to say that because I get shy and nervous and everything, but I just knew I wasn't like someone that's like, I'm gonna, you know, get nasty and stuff. I was laughing before my races. Like, I did well by being around people and laughing and, you know, enjoying my time. And then I could like turn it off like 5 minutes before and do the thing. And then afterwards it's like, okay, my perspective was, it's just swimming. You know, when I could say that to myself, I performed well.
Hmm.
And some athletes need to say, like, this is the most important thing in the entire world, and I have to do this for them to do well. I would not do well if I did
Right.
that. You know, I always had like a very worldly view of it. So the lessons that I'm learning now stem way back to when I was a young teen in my sport, just learning who I was, how I acted, what young Caroline did, and how that is showing up in my life now that I never really understood at all. I just put my head down and did the work. So, um, yeah, it was like a long journey. It was 20 plus years of my life, as long as I remember swimming.
Yeah. And did you experience when you finished like this sense of loss?
Yes. Yeah. Um, so let's see, it was 2004 that I went to college, graduated in 2008, well, Olympics in 2008. And then in 2009, I retired swimming. In 2010, I retired swimming. And I'll never forget how horrible that feeling was. I was at nationals in Irvine, and uh, I knew I was ready to be done. You know, I had gone through the ringer with my life and with it all, but that feeling of like a death happening, like you're just like, I'm ready, but I'm also sitting in the gutter bawling my eyes out because I know that I'm done, and that is terrifying. But I'm ready, but I'm terrified. But I'm ready, but I'm terrified. And also, I have 17,000 bags of luggage of shit that I have to unpack that I don't want to do at all. So now I'm just going to avoid all of that and just run away.
Yeah.
And so I experienced a great sense of loss when I retired, for sure, because I had known one thing. And that one thing was driving my life. I knew my goal. I knew what I wanted to do. I knew how I wanted to do it. And I knew I was going to do it. And, but I knew I was worth more than that. And so it was this conflicting feeling of loss, but also excitement.
Mhm.
It was
And
like a death and a birth in the same moment, you know, but you're terrified of both. So you're just paralyzed. So all I knew how to run in that, or all I knew how to do was run in that freeze mode, like run from everything.
right. And do you think that, like we discussed before, like you kind of had this one habit or one pattern or one way to approach like what it is that you were doing, which was swimming on the world stage. How did that, um, basically, how did you approach that? How did you unpack that? And was that a healthy way of approaching things? Because sometimes I know for
So
me, like for a lot of my athletic career, like I played basketball before CrossFit, and
yeah,
I was just always so driven at that. And when I was uncomfortable with anything like coming up in my body, or something like weird was happening in my life that I didn't like, I went to the basketball court or I went to the gym. And so that was kind of it, what was once just such a love almost became like this coping mechanism. And then it almost became too like this obsession of I had to
yeah.
validation or achievement. So I'm just kind of wondering, like, what was your experience with that, with swimming?
So I've always been very in tune with my body ever since I was a young girl. I don't blame my mom, but I credit it to my mom. She's San Francisco, Northern California, born and raised, high school, college, she's a hippie. She loves it. That's her life. And that's what she has taught us. And my dad is like as Southern as it gets, Kentucky, Louisville, Kentucky, they're polar opposites. And so I remember growing up and my mom would ask me some of those questions about how I felt all the time, like, how's your body feeling and things like that. And I didn't really get it. I was closed-minded with that, but I always knew, I didn't, I was not a trainer. I would get broken down really easily. And I think, as I reflect back now on my life as a swimmer up until after college, which is a whole different body experience, which I'll get to next, I thought that all of my exhaustion was purely physical. And until I look back and recognize it, all of my exhaustion, yes, is physical. Of course, I'm training 8 hours a day. Yes, you're exhausted. Yes, you have that lethargic, that broken down feeling. Your adrenals are taxed and gone and you're not getting periods and all that. Yeah, of course, those were badges of honor in a way.
Wow.
But I was emotionally validating my worth and my life through my sport.
Mm.
And so now that I think back to those moments, and this is so crazy to think back to it, especially right now as I'm talking to you, because all the times that my body would just hit rock bottom and crash and my adrenals would be totally toast were the times that I wasn't feeling that I was impressing, pleasing, and I wasn't validated in my success.
Mm.
So I wasn't doing well. I was maybe not performing the way I wanted to. And so all of that was this emotional, like, I'm not enough. This is horrible. I'm not going to please. I'm not going to impress. And now I'm just going to crash and burn until I find something to pull me back out, which is probably somebody telling me that, oh, you're great and it's going to be fine. And, it's like I was relying on all of these things that just totally validated me in the moment, but didn't serve me. And
Yeah.
they show up now too. Like, no one's going to save you, Caroline, and yes, people can, yeah, like, yes, people can help you. And this is a daily battle. And I admit it all the time. I'm like, I love to feel, like held up in that space, but there's a difference between feeling held up and loved and nurtured, and then like that being the validation.
Yes. Oh my
So
God. Yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely. Like, and I think it's funny because when you're an athlete, I think one of your best qualities is that someone tells you to do something, you can go do it. Right. It
yeah,
is like, here's the schedule. It's insane. But you're like, okay, I can do that. But then when we don't hit that all the time and we kind of lose our sense of autonomy, like, hey, I need a break and I'm going to not feel guilty about that. And I'm not going to I'm not going to talk to 5 different people and, crying my sob story about like how I'm not good enough and then try to find that external validation. So it's really cool because I think this whole journey and what I was talking about with someone lately, it's like this journey of always becoming this outer champion, right? It's like this hero's journey. We want to be that outer champion. And then after the athletic life is done, we have to learn how to be inner champions to ourselves, right? And I guess that's this whole journey of self-love, is being easy on ourselves when we do need help, when we need
yeah,
to be held up, and also knowing how to hold space for ourselves and like whatever is coming up, whatever emotion.
yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah, it's such an interesting journey. And I think it's, you know, it's it crosses all boundaries within any sport. It's very much a
Yes.
universal experience.
Yes. And I think the biggest mistake that I've made in the past, 10 years in healing a lot of those things are that I think I'm just going to check a box and be totally healed and done. And at some point I was like, okay, that's not how it works. Like, you're always healing from something throughout your life and changing and growing. Even when you're 100 years old, I'm sure there's things that are like, okay, I'm healing from something 5 years ago or whatever it is. It's not just a check the box kind of journey. And I thought that, and I was so used to results. Like, everything was results based. So perfect. If I just check this box, then I'm totally great. And I'll get past this, and I'll get past this pain of this relationship and this pain from this situation and this, like, perfect. Like, so tell me, when is it going to be? Like next week or a week after that, and I just was so scheduled and regimented in this life because that's what I thought that I needed. And I think, okay, so just to take myself outside of my professional athlete world and life, when I retired, I ran. Gnarly run, gone. I was so, like, I was messed up. I'll be honest. I was messed up. And I mean that in a very positive, loving way. I'm not trying to put myself down or anything like that, but I was not healthy. And the reason why I wasn't was because I had gone through a lot of situations in relationships and in coaching scenarios and in personal choices that were unhealthy throughout my career that coincided with such a wonderful time in my life of being an athlete that did amazing things. And so I carried so much shame, but I wasn't mature enough, and I wasn't aware enough to handle that or to face it.
Mm-hmm.
So what I did was I went and chased every other accolade I possibly could, or certificate or certification or degree or race or, whatever else I was doing in order to feel validated. Because again, that external validation was something that I was thinking was going to help me become whole and get past and check that box of, like, if I just keep doing things, it will help.
Oh my God. Yes.
And, like, yes, it did help,
Yeah.
because it kept me busy and I made friends, and, like, sure, everything came out of everything comes out of everything. I get that. But it also, if I'm not going into those situations of trying to get all of these things and do all of these things, my mindset's in the wrong place to begin with, to start with. I wasn't doing them in order to experience them. I was doing them just to get to be done with it, so that I could say, look at me, I did it. Even though I didn't want the attention outwardly, really, like, I would be really shy and embarrassed and I wouldn't talk about it. I just want, like, oh yeah, I totally did that. I did that Ragnar relay. I got that sports psych degree. I got my fashion school degree. I, worked at Lululemon, did this, moved to San Diego, got a job there, moved back home, did 2 years of therapy, moved to Tennessee, it was like, I literally just kept running, like, everywhere I went. And, it was awesome because it was like adventure time, sure. But
Yeah.
I was not healthy. I mean, I was crying regularly. I was sick. I was 120 pounds for a 5'10", 11 woman. And I mean, I'm almost 25 pounds, 30 pounds more than that now. I can't imagine being that anymore.
Right.
But I was just not nurturing myself.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing was sticking. Nothing was absorbing. I was giving it all and full of shame. And I wasn't not eating. I was eating. I was just controlling and regimenting, and I couldn't possibly have anything else come into my little scope of work that would cause me to face everything that I did. So I'm just going to stay really focused and control everything and push everything else away and do my thing. And, like, I don't want to date. I don't want to do this. I don't want that. Bye. And so that caused a lot of problems, which in my body, I mean.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting because I think, being an athlete is the, I think, biggest expression of like that, this hyper masculine paradigm we've grown up in, which is linear progression, always be on, always show up, you know, get this idea of get better every day, you know, like conquer it, like, and you see it all in our society. It's the David Goggins of the world. It's the Jocko Willings, right? It's this Navy SEAL idea. It's this masculine leadership style. And this is how life should be lived. And all of a sudden, and this is what I've learned too, we don't have an awesome model of feminine leadership or just harmonized masculine and feminine leadership, which is, I think, what the world is like, you know, going towards right now on our current crazy, chaotic world path. But
Right.
we never had that. I never knew how to slow down and nurture my feelings. Like, I remember my mom being like, it's okay to like just cry when you have your period and like sit in bed and eat cake. And I'm like, well, no, because I have to, you know, wake up and train like a badass and like lift that weight that I've wanted to lift. And it was so hard for me to understand this, because I was operating from a place of you are not enough and you have to do to be of value. So, and it's funny because now I'm learning that is the process. It's like once I've gone through that archetype, those two different archetypes of I am enough and I do what is empowered for me to do.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's like, that's like the next stage of like healing. And if you want to put healing into like hierarchies, which you, like you said, you really can't. It's just like,
Right.
like for me, it's this spiral upwards and you keep coming back to the same issues. And it's like, okay, now I have these different tools and I can view this through a different lens. Okay, now I get that. There's some truth to this, and then keep going on our journeys upwards. And
Right.
there's still days though when I'm like, I still have this crippling self-doubt, or like my inner self-critic and my ego comes up like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to create an empire. I'm going to, you know, and so, and which we need, because I think it's part of our, you know, we totally need the ego.
Right.
Yeah. In this live stream, but for me, it's all about understanding how to cultivate that divine feminine essence, which I totally pushed down for so long. So I was wondering, how do you cultivate your divine feminine energy without always going to the default mode, which we love, which is sport, right? Which of course is a part of who we are, but there's other ways that I'm exploring to do that. So I'm wondering, how do you do that?
Oh, this is so great. So during the time when I retired swimming into now, I've had 1 year of periods.
Nice. Woohoo!
10 years. I've on a 1 year winning streak right now. And I just had 1 year of regular periods for the first time in all of my life. And even when I was competing in swimming and everything, I would have them very sporadically. Like I would have them, but it would be mainly around taper or like times when my body was putting on a little extra body weight in order to perform. And I was always needing to put on more body weight. And when I dropped down into like the low 100s of body weight, I didn't have periods from 2010 until 2018. Not one.
Wow.
Dry as a bone, barren, like nothing flowing through my body. Bones were weakening. And during that time, it felt like my womanly tendencies and feeling of being a woman were like just seeping out of my body. Like I didn't have any life flowing to me. Like the thought of anything feminine felt foreign. And it wasn't because, I don't necessarily know that it was because I was an athlete, which is interesting because even when I was competing, and I had a boyfriend all through competing. I mean, not in high school. I was like too shy and stuff, but I had a boyfriend all through my, competition years. And I was like, very womanly. And even though it was unhealthy, it was like, I felt like sexy and turned on all the time. And like, I was always vibing. Like I was just like vibing all the time. And then when I finished swimming, it was like, boom, drop, like, you need to shut off. Granted, I was a little bit emotionally in turmoil from an unhealthy situation for a long time. So I was like, you're not worth it. Your body is not worth it. Your mind is not worth it. You have no, like, just shut off, just shut down.
Mhm.
And so because of that contrast, when I got my periods back, it was like, whoa, like, holy shit, you know, like, you put on all of this new, like, curvy feeling about you, like, your body displacement's different. And I was freaked out at first. Like, I was like, holy shit. Like, this reminds me of your butt post the other day, your ass post. You were like, since I was done, my ass has become curvier and all these things. And I was like, hell yes, because I was freaked out. I was like, where are my lower two abs? Why are those gone? First of all, like, that was weird to me. And it was
Why
so
am I not shaped like a triangle anymore?
triangle. Yeah. I was like, this is so weird. And I had so much shame around that because I thought being a woman was supposed to be, you know, this like easy transition. You just feel like, you know, everything just like kind of still stays the same, but like you feel, but so I felt good, but then I was like, oh no, like, this can't be right. You know? So that took like 6 months to really settle into my body. And once I got to that point, which was like November, December, which was oddly enough the same time as a horrible concussion that I had, I was finally like cracked open, just like, this is me. Like, this is my femininity. This is my womanhood. This is me. And all of a sudden, it was like this huge light bulb went off. And my life before that period of darkness, of staleness, of feeling like I was just skin and bones and like like sallow and, you know, just, I wasn't healthy. It was like all of the vibrancy that I had throughout my years, like, came back. And it was like, I want to touch myself. Like, I love being naked. I spent my whole life naked, but I was covering myself so much when I was too thin. And so, you know, I was like so ashamed. And I'm just now like, okay, here I am, you know, and so a lot of that through therapy, a lot of it was cultivated through the ocean. A lot of it was cultivated through, well, my current therapy now, and a lot of it was cultivated through self-work and personal work that I just dove into everything I could possibly understand about my personal body. What makes it work, what feels good, what, like, even massages and touch, and like, what feels good for me that I pushed away for so long, and how can I bring that back? And yeah, it's like my number one love language is physical touch. And I was not even wanting that for so long. So the contrast of it has really helped me tune back into that and get in the flow and the fluidity of that with my body. So yeah, it's a long-winded answer to that question.
No, basically, yeah, I get it. What you're saying, like, your life force, which we call like the vessel yin, was just like at a little trickle. There's probably like nothing in there. And so once you, like, you know, went down and into your subconscious, into your psyche, which is what women, that's how we know to do. That's what happens on our period, right? The veil between the subconscious and conscious is thin.
Right.
All of a sudden you're able to go in and find that, okay, yeah, there's a lot of darkness here, and I'm going to experience pleasure for pleasure's sake, which is what we are told not to do.
Yes.
You know? And it's really interesting because, and I was the same way. I love that you said that. Like, when I was competing, I was horny all the time. Like, but it wasn't necessarily pleasurable sex. And what I've read is that it was expecting sex. It was like this sex where it's like, it comes from this sense of like, okay, I just need to like check the box, right? Because I'm horny and I just need to have sex, instead of like eagerness and like, okay, yeah, I want this because of like pleasure, and like and so that can create really unhealthy relationships because, you know, it gets down to, okay, no, I'm expecting this, like, let's go. There was no like, okay, let's take our time. Let's build up, you know, the boiling water, which is feminine pleasure, right? I was approaching sex in a very, you know, 1 + 1 = 2.
Right.
After orgasm, if you can relax it, and then move on with your day.
Yep. Yep.
So it's really interesting when we do start to slow down and when we do hold ourselves and learn how to turn ourselves on ourselves, like, and you're right, like touching yourself and being with yourself completely changes your
Yeah.
like relationship with pleasure,
Right.
and just loving on yourself. It completely,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. And becoming proud of your, like you said, like your physical vessel, like taking pride in that it's not an ornament and it's not like this, pretty thing. And it's also not just an instrument, but you can combine the two to find this beautiful awakening of, okay, I view myself as this, like I can fill myself with all of these pleasurable things. And also it's an instrument that I choose to use for these things, not just to check the box off to get the result. And then that's why it's good. That's the only thing it's good for.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like combining the two, because it's like, for so long during competition years, like you said, it's an instrument. Okay, that is what you do. You use it for this. So that means everything else needs to be used just the same way, whether it's school, sex, talks, relationships, like whatever it is, and
Yes.
sport, boom.
Yeah.
You are that and you will get that shit done. And then it's like, okay, so now that I can choose what I want to do with it and be proud of the way it looks and feels and understand it better and learn it better and get curious with it, how do I combine those two things to be, okay, like, it's here, it's physically here, it's present, and also it's good for more than just the result of
Yes.
it. It's the
Yeah.
process of it.
That
Yeah.
not everything has to have a result or like this, like, and that's what I was talking about with Raw of Earth on my last interview, was that
Mhm.
we get so attached to outcomes and results, but that's not how like the feminine energy works. It's
No.
not, it's just being.
Yeah.
And it's really cool when you start to connect those dots. And really, I think being an athlete, we do know our bodies so well, but there's still this mind body split.
Yep.
And what sounds like what we've gone through or what you're going through is that like now you're like being able to drop in and actually use your mind to drop into the body to actually feel it.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
such a powerful experience. And what I wanted to ask you is that you had said that, losing your period and being just super ripped was kind of like this badge of honor. And I wanted to talk about like that mentality in the Olympic
Mm.
world, like, and it was like this in the CrossFit world, right? Like it's small and it happens
Yeah.
slowly over time. It kind of picks away at you, but it's like, oh, she's a successful athlete. I need to make sure that I'm like that. And so then you like change everything and, become more rigid, more strict, more.
Yeah.
So what is the mentality of like that Olympic world? Would
Yeah. And it's
you from
interesting
coaches
because,
as well?
yeah, I felt like I was always told to be and to look a certain way. And for me personally, it was like, you need to be bigger and stronger, because I was small. Like I was smaller ish for a swimmer for the 200 and 400. Um, I'm 5'10" and my competitors are like 6'1", and a lot, like they stand a bit sturdier and taller than I did. And it's an interesting dynamic here, actually. I was always told to be bigger and stronger and that I needed to lift more and get bigger and stronger and do all these things in order to compete with the people that I wanted to compete with. But then it was this badge of honor to be the smaller one.
Mm.
And I realized that now. And so, it's interesting because as I'm 33 and as my body has changed immensely, and as I do live my life naked in a swimsuit, it's easy for people and anybody to scrutinize anything that I would ever say about my body in the past, or like wanting that as like a badge of honor. It's like, well, Caroline, you're always posting in bikinis on Instagram, so like, isn't it still a badge of honor? And it's different because nothing's ever going to be enough, or you're never going to be fully satisfied, right? And that's what I've learned. That's the biggest lesson, and across the board, the thing that I've like been so excited to even say on this is like, it was never enough then. And even now I'm like, oh, I could really like clean up my gut bacteria. And like, I'm pretty bloated today. And like, I could really do, and so it's like, is it ever going to be enough? Are you ever going to wake up one morning and be like, I've made it. I
Yeah.
feel amazing head to toe. There's not one thing that I would feel like I could have a little bit better. I don't care who you are. And sure, I do have days where I'm like, I'm fucking killing it. Like I feel great. But it's the mentality of an athlete and things that I heard maybe from coaches and from societal pressures and everything. It's never going to be enough. You need to always look different, be better, feel better, etc. And that shows up now, always.
Mm-hmm.
Even if I am living my life the way I live it, like running around on beaches and stuff, like I come home and I'm like, oh, I need to like make sure I'm this way, or like maybe I should like really be eating healthier. Like I just feel bloated. There's always something that I'm criticizing. And so that's my biggest area of deep work right now is if it's not ever going to be enough, what is it? What is enough? Like, what does that look like? And how do you create that? Because you're always going to want more. That's why you have that mindset. So what's the feminine side to it that is enough and whole and pleasurable and holistic? If you have that yang that's like, I want to achieve, I want to be better. Like, how can you have both?
I want to be my best self. And yeah, and so actually I just talked about this the other day with my members, is that sometimes on the like even when going down the spiritual path of healing, we can become like masculine with it. Like, okay, what am I doing? Am I doing enough? And one of my girlfriends called me and was like, and I've actually had a lot of girlfriends call me and be like, I just spent the past week doing nothing. Like I just sat inside and I like watched
Yeah.
Netflix. And I was like, yeah, that's
Yeah.
okay. And I've
Yeah.
had to do that with myself. Like, oh, I should be more, I should be meditating and like doing,
Right.
like you're doing all these things, you're doing these things. But it's like, no, sometimes guess what? You're going to be a piece of shit and just sit in bed and eat cake and cry. And that's totally
Fine.
fine, right? Like, and the process of self-love, process of self-love is just accepting that. It's like, yeah, this is who I am and this is where I am at. And it's the self-criticism that we've grown up with because we think that is how we're going to get better all the time. Is this self-criticism? No, it's when we let go of that and just totally be where we are right now with what we are. And that's when you understand that, oh my God, yeah, my life is so beautiful and like every day is so sacred. And for me, I think that's why I got kind of like Spartan kicked to the chest out of this world that I was in, because I was always looking for that self-worth through performance. And it wasn't until that, like, and I think internally there was always this odd of like, well, what am I actually doing? And how am I providing value to this earth and into this life experience? Like, I'm making people think that like they can get a six pack and they have to train like 4 to 6 hours a day. And like, am I providing worth? And I had that turmoil all the time. And like, I was judging myself, well, I need to be more academic. I should get my master's. I should go do my MBA. And then, it was always at odds. And it was like this internal guilt and shame all of a sudden became external. And all these people were pointing fingers at me. And I was like, fuck, I manifested all of this. And so, it's really learning how to, the ego is so important and it's a really great tool. And like, you're obviously, and I have questions to ask you about like success after this, but like, it's always about then balancing that out and learning how to harmonize that and not even, we love to judge and self-criticize even this experience of healing. And
So, so I like re-entered into therapy like maybe 6 months ago. I was in it for 2.5 years after when I moved back to Louisville. So I moved back to Louisville and bought my own place when I left San Diego in 2014, maybe, or no, 2011. Oh my gosh. And I stayed there until 2000. Fit him. Go to grad school, move back out here. And when I was at home, home, I was in therapy. It was so humbling to go through that, because what I recognized, oh,
Hey,
hey,
hold on.
you're back.
I'm just
Hey.
making sure that it didn't drop all the beauty we just talked about before. So,
Oh, it still says recording, so maybe not.
okay, I'm gonna trust. I hope it
We'll
does.
trust. If not, we can always do another.
Yeah, okay. Sweet.
um, so yeah, okay. So I was saying, okay, so I went through that path, but when I was in therapy, I was very self-critical. And I would criticize myself, thinking that that was how I was going to learn, right? Like, oh, you're so horrible at this. And, oh, that's the reason for that. Oh, you just allowed all of these patterns. And
Yes.
oh, you've never thought you're enough. And oh, right. Instead of, like, there's a huge distinction. There's a huge difference between self-criticism and providing constructive negative feedback to yourself.
Mhm.
And I didn't know the languaging of that
Mhm.
very well. So I would just beat myself up. And I still do it to this day, where I'm like, Caroline, what the fuck was that? Like, that's horrible. Why'd you just do it? And I'm just like, would you say this to some,
Right.
what are you saying? And so, um, yeah, I that's been something that I've moved through and learned at a rapid rate, is the difference between those two. Cause I always thought that the only way that I could get better was if somebody, or me, is telling the very worst of something and breaking somebody down and breaking them down and breaking them down and breaking them down until they can succeed. And
And it's interesting how that pattern of really bad internal self-talk and
mhm,
criticism will show up then in your relationships, because then you
totally.
and then you that criticism that you say to yourself, all of a sudden it's said to you by someone you love, and you're just like, fuck, like,
Yeah.
and it would just ruin me. It would ruin me because I feel like I was like, I already say that to myself. I don't need
Yeah.
you to say it. But then I realized, like, oh, if I stop talking to myself like this and treat myself like my own best friend, like how I would try to pick my friend back up in
Yeah.
from the shambles, then all of a sudden my reality completely changes. And
Totally.
I don't
Yeah.
that stuff won't happen as much. Or now I know how to be like, because I love myself so much. Now I know that I'm like, okay, what they're saying is they're hurting, not me. Like,
Yeah.
alive and
Right.
right.
Right. And so the thing that is interesting with the self-criticism, is that is when the ego takes over a
Mhm.
lot of times, because what you're doing, and this is just my experience, is getting to this place where you can criticize yourself so much that there's so much pain and there's so much chaos and there's so much turmoil that it's fun, right? Like,
Mm.
you're like, so I lived the pattern that I'm learning from therapy right now. She's really great at, like, diving into all of the patterns that I've had my whole life and really understanding, is that I was addicted in a sense, and I don't love the word addicted, but I was obsessed with the chaos.
Mm.
So that's why I stayed in abusive situations. That's why I did what I did, as far as um, running when I was finished and trying to find all these accolades and achievements. I was addicted to this chaotic feeling of, the harder it is, the more I can criticize myself, the more I can be in these situations where it's like do or die, like, it's the only way that you're going to make it out alive. um, it felt so good, because when you overcome it, it's this high.
Yes.
And then you drop back to the high again, and you're depressed and you're worthless again. And then you find the chaos, and you find the situations that will validate you because you're overcoming the chaos.
Oh my
And
God. Yes.
so I went through that at extreme rate. Like, and I still am. Like, I find myself sometimes like, what can I make, like, oh my gosh, like, I'll be doing all this stuff and I'm making it really hard. I'm like, what can I make hard around here? I'm like, what
Yes.
are you doing? It makes no sense at all. Even with my body. Like, I criticize what is showing up for me, or if I feel a little bit off, or I'm like, oh, that must be because of that. Like, that's not operating. That's not right. And that just feels like shit. And it's like, okay, what's the negative feedback? Like, better, how can that serve you better here? Okay, Caroline, what's showing up? maybe is there something this week that has caused you a little bit of discomfort? And instead of creating more of a mountain out of that molehill, how can you move into that and sit with that for a second, communicate that to the people or to yourself, and then go back to your body and get back in tune with that. You know, it's like tuning the fork instead of like, okay, I'm better. And then it's like, it happens again. It just doesn't work.
Interesting pattern. And I see that with myself. Everything speeds up. And I'm like, I need to get this done. I need to take on that. I say yes to this. Let's do more. And then shit just implodes for me. My relationship gets really messed up from that. And people in my life. It is chaos. It's a chaos creation. And it's funny because when I've started to become aware of that pattern as well. And when I sit still and just like calm down and take some deep breaths, things change. So it's like when I get into that really like hyperdrive mode, I really try to pull back and like not work out or don't try to go do all these errands that I have to get done, because I did one time. I locked my keys in my car, you know, like crazy shit just
fight or flight. You know, like you're in that fight or flight, and that's the only way that I knew how to survive too for a long time, was like how, like that's my survival mechanism, was the fight or flight, in the way of like, okay, how can I just create all this chaos and make everything really hard, because I'm just gonna like fight until I overcome, and then I'm gonna flight and run away, and that pattern continues. And I get it that we are creatures of this planet, and we are always going to be in that phase. Like we are all surviving in a way every day, like whether it's like financially and making sure we're safe, and like everybody wants to be safe, right? Even if you're an adventure soul, like you still want to find this sense of safety. But it's just, it's really good to become aware of what your safety pattern is. Because if you feel safer by being addicted to that and addicted to that chaos and that like, and me personally, it's learning that it's okay to have that friction. It's okay to have that feeling of, okay, like, let's do the dance. Let's make this a little bit, you know, let's challenge yourself a little bit, but to a point that's healthy, and to a point that, you know, that's needed in order to succeed, and not the only way that you are going to succeed and survive. It's a good tool to have, not your survival way.
Yes. And that's when I look back on my college basketball career, and we were like intense basketball players, right? Like we were building a program. We wanted to win national championships. And I could see myself, like I worked so hard in that one realm, but then I would be engaging in very risky behaviors outside of that. And I'm like, fuck, why was I doing that? And I'm like, oh, well, you just broke it down for me. Like, I was looking for the same, like that adrenaline and kind of like pushing the envelope all the time. And it's really interesting because when you do read about our stress response cycle, a lot of the times we don't finish it. It's a cycle, right? It has to complete. And in our modern lifestyle and in athletics, it doesn't always complete. Your brain is still there. Your body is still in that like adrenaline mode. And so, I think it is very important to complete that cycle. And for me, the tools in my toolbox of doing that now is through softness, not like going to like skydive or jump off a cliff or like do something kind of crazy. And I wanted to ask you, in terms of success, like, how do you approach success now without being in that linear, like checking boxes style? Like, how do you approach it, especially owning a business where it's kind of all on you? Like,
oh my gosh,
how do you now manage that?
First of all, I am the furthest thing from perfect at any of these things. Like, caveat to everything I've said, I don't have anything figured out. And the more that I learn about it, the more I realize I have nothing figured out. And one of the things that I stand passionately behind is in these conversations and in talks and things that I give, it's my experience shared and hoping that people can relate in some way and learn lessons from it, but also being so vulnerably honest with like, I don't have shit figured out, you know, but I'm willing to try over and over and over again. And I've seen leaps and bounds in my life of getting to an understanding of what it means to be successful and what it means to understand who I am as a person, physically, emotionally, spiritually. And I think that's the journey, right? Our whole lives are a journey of that.
Mm-hmm.
We're never going to just check that box and have it figured out, because then you're complacent. Like, then what?
Right.
So I think what I've learned about success is that it's curiosity for me. So the more curious I get about what I can create and what I can harness as things and gifts that I have and value and cherish, the more that I see myself succeeding. So the moment that I'm like, I'm just totally bored, have nothing else to say about this topic, don't know what I'm going to say about Rise, don't really care about my art and design, like that's not success to me. That's complacency and boredom. So I'm succeeding when I have ideas. I'm succeeding when I feel like I know that growth. And my work is done largely with nobody seeing anything. And that's the hard part about owning a business, is nobody sees anything that you do on a regular basis, especially since our business is behind a computer and it's private conversation. And that's changing a little bit, but you know, my success can't be seen like it used to. It can't be held on a pedestal and, you know, with a blue ribbon and a medal attached to it. It's going to be largely internal and largely trusting that process to find that success. And that's been a huge mind fuck for me for a long time, because I'm like, where is it? Nobody sees it. I just want to have something to show, which the art show was really cool for. And the biggest thing I learned from that is, after the show's over, guess what? You got to go back and get curious about how to create more of this to continue to do what you want to do. Mm-hmm. It's not just you sit there and oh, done, like finished, success, like moving on. That's not how it works, you know? So I've learned that success is curiosity in that way versus just a result of something. So the more I'm curious, the more I'm creating, the more I want to do that, desire and have that desire to do so, the more successful I'll be. Otherwise, I'm just sitting on my ass on the couch, which is totally fine too, but that's not the plan to do every day. Only one day a week.
And is that what you give yourself?
Oh, like, I think you froze again.
It's okay. Am I
back? Are you there?
Yeah.
Are you there? I think. Oh, okay. Wait, I just heard you. Maybe. Oh, you're there. Okay. I see you. Yeah. Okay.
Perfect. And is that what you give yourself, like that one day a week, like couch time?
Oh yeah. I mean, honestly, I just listen to what I need now. And some days you can't really, right? You've got things to do as far as work stuff and calls and arrangements. And, but I've gotten pretty smart with my boundaries and holding a very respectful thing for other people, respectful feelings, respectful communication, and showing love for them when I need my space and a boundary. And I think it's hard when I used to run and just cut people off and not explain it, and then they'd be hurt and confused. And so now it's like, I love you and I can't wait to do these things, and I need like to just cry on the couch with, you know, a glass of mezcal and a really shitty rom-com and just do that. And that has I'm a homebody. Like, I like that. So I give myself that when I need it, and sometimes in increments. Like if it's not a full day, I'll try and get like a couple nights a week where I'm just like gonna stay here and nest and water my plants and like walk around naked in my bathrobe and just like become, you know, very sensual with myself and be with me.
Which is so amazing, because that's just the art of being and loving on yourself. And I love what you said about curiosity, because really that should be our metric of success. Because even I'm really into the whole like women's sexual health world, and I was just reading a book about the biggest thing for like long-term relationships is to, and even with your own sexuality and your sexuality with others, is to maintain curiosity. Like, why do I feel that way? Or oh, what's this about? And it's like that will always, that curiosity that will always create that desire. And it's interesting because now you've put that into your own personal spin on it. And it's like that desire and will always come up. And what does desire create? Like life force creativity, like
Yeah.
pushes it out. So
Yeah. And that's why I started sketching again. I took such a long time off of it. And when I got curious again, and when I started to get curious about that, I was also simultaneously healing my body.
mm,
You know, I'd broken my heel twice in a year and a half. I got a concussion. I had septic knee in the hospital. I had like all within like a year and almost right under 2 years time. This is like 16 to 18. And I remember just being on the couch doing nothing. I couldn't walk. I mean, I couldn't even walk. So it was like, okay, I'm just going to sit all day. And I was not in a healthy headspace. It was different than before, but I remember just being like tapping back into, okay, what makes you curious right now? What are you curious about? So I started sketching, and I started to sketch fashion sketches of like women and bodies and things that are so different than what I was doing in school. And it felt liberating, and it felt like that piece of curiosity reminded me that I've always been so freaking curious as a kid, as a teen, as in college, like after, and it doesn't matter what it is. It's just, it trickles into other areas of your life.
yeah.
You can get curious about that, you know? And then my periods came back. Go figure, you know, I sat on my ass long enough. I got curious. I became healthier physically, mentally, spiritually, because I was facing old things. Had to sit still for the first time in my life to face everything, you know? And so when I did all of that, it does spark, like if you choose it to, it sparks your curiosity. Okay, what's happening now? Rebirth. Let's do it.
Funny how the universe was just like hammering you, like, slow down, Caroline.
Oh,
Slow down, Caroline. And yeah,
yeah.
it's really interesting. I did want to say about, it's like this change, this shift between bulldozing through life and through your relationships and like your work relationships to being a container, which is approaching it from this place of that beautiful feminine leadership, which is container holding, a place of love, like making sure people are lifted up. I love that idea. You just nailed it on the head. And for me, it was after, you know, the whole my CrossFit fallout and like just the intense emotional pain I was going through. I was like, all right, I'm traveling. I got this opportunity to go to Israel. So I started walking. It was like this walk back to myself kind of life. But then I went from Israel to India, and I arrived at this ashram, and all of a sudden there was like nothing to do. Like you did yoga at like 5 a.m. And then I was like, what's going on? Like, what else do we do? I thought there'd be like some spiritual like boot camp. And I remember this British girl was just like, oh, yeah, you're a Westerner. You know, I was like, what do we do all day here? And she was like, nothing. Do nothing. And she's like, you can sit, you can stare at the Ganges. And like, so that's what I did. And then it was like, oh, all this stuff started coming up.
Yeah.
I just did it. I just adhered to not doing. I just kind of like meandered around.
Yes.
Like, oh my God. And my whole world changed. My like spirit came back. It was crazy. And so, yeah, I think really encouraging, and that's kind of what psychedelic gypsy fitness is about, is like encouraging women to slow down, or anyone really. It's like, let's stop overscheduling. Let's stop doing and balance that out with some being, you know, like that's more important, and it's more uncomfortable. Yes. But it's more important than, well, I guess it's the yin and the yang, like you talked about. It's
right.
And the stillness, the movement and the stillness.
Yeah. And I try to live my life that way as much as possible. And it's funny because I get comments from people like, oh my gosh, you're like always working out. And I'm like, okay. Also, no, I'm not, because 90% of the things that I do are play. When I go to the gym, those are actual workouts, like to where I'm like, hey, I'm gonna like come here and get physically fit and stronger and et cetera. And that's like 3 days a week, to be honest.
Right.
And then all the other things that I do are to feel myself in my body, whether it's in the ocean, which is pure play, because I have no agenda out there. I have no, like, nowhere to be, no timeline. I choose times to go when I can totally play and dive up and down in the surf and enjoy, and like at home yoga and playing tennis across the street. And just like things that it's like, life doesn't have to be so serious for that side of it. And people can believe what they want to believe. But I'm also aware that, you know, that yin and the yang, when my body knows it's time to like shut it off, you better freaking believe I will take days off. I take like, you know, I'm just like, meh, I'm just gonna like go on a walk and like do an ice bath tomorrow, and then like, you know, play tennis the next day, like just for fun. But I won't exert that like yang so hard to where I know it's going to throw myself out of the soft feminine feeling that I have. Like I'm to a point where I'm fine tuning that almost perfectly to where I'm like, oh my God, I need my bathrobe and a massaging candle. It's like, holy shit, it's been way too much yang for the past 3 days, you know? So I think I used to push that away, and now it's like, give it to me. Like I want that and crave that.
Absolutely. And that this is what all those like ladies are talking about, like Mama Gina and Kim and Nami and Layla Martin. Like there's like shit, give back to yourself, because it's like if no one else is gonna do it. No one else is gonna do it for you. And you have to know the things that give back to you and enliven you. And it can't just always be putting out. So yeah, and I really think play is a skill, and it's a skill I totally lost a long time ago. But yeah, getting back into just being like connecting with our inner child, right? And being goofy and either with ourselves or with some friends. And that's a beautiful, this is, I love where I am because it's just such a beautiful exploration of this whole world, right? I guess just to finish up is what would you say, especially like I'm sure running a business, like, and I would want to know, like in the first year it was probably like, oh my God, I don't know. How would you, what are some tools that you have used even in your Olympic career to overcome like self-doubt?
I actually adopted a really interesting way to change a negative thought pattern. I used to wear a rubber band around my wrist, and like when I would feel it, I would like slap it. And that sounds weird. I mean, I wouldn't like, I would just like, I'd feel it.
Flagellate.
And I think that the reps of that throughout a long time of healing that part of me has really helped me with the self-doubt. But I'll be honest with you. I go through that every day. I mean, every day I'm like, what are we doing? This is all just ridiculous. And it's almost like I find myself in this place of like wanting that so that I can like find why it should be good, you know? And so, yeah, again, it's like you know, and so I've gotten to a point now where I know really, really well that all it takes for me is physical touch. So like, if I'm in a place where I'm like doubting everything, I just need a freaking hug, and I need to communicate that feeling. And I need to express. I'm very expressive with my body and with my language and everything. So I need to say, I am talking to myself like shit. I'm doubting everything. I'm in a very vulnerable state. I'm not in a good place. I know this will pass, and I need a fucking hug. And so I think that has been like being able to just own that instead of like, I'm fine. Like, I'm not fine. Not fine. Yeah. Like that's so passive aggressive to me now. And now that I see it, I'm like, no. So I used to do that. I was queen of not having needs. Queen, don't needs, no needs. I don't need them. I'm fine. I'll figure it out. I'm tough, whatever. And so now it's like, okay, I can have needs. I need a hug. I need to communicate this. Can I have 5 minutes? And I just need to get this off my chest. And usually I'm like, okay, like onward, you know, but it's like this feeling of getting that out there clears it from my body and from my system so that I don't have to hold on to it. And I battled this for a little while because we have a lot of messages in our culture telling us to just let it go and like sit with the thought and let it go. And yes, turn toward it, but know what works in order to let it go. Because what works for everybody is some people need to write, some people need to talk to themselves. Some people need to go on a walk, like, you know, whatever it is to like let something go. And mine's like, I just need to say it to somebody. So
Yeah.
I'll like voice memo one of my best friends, or, you know, it's like something to just like get that off your chest and
Totally.
express it. Yeah. So
Oh,
that's helped me with self-doubt a lot.
I love that. I've just learned so much from you in this short time. Like, because
Same for me too.
yeah, it's so cool because I like even just with starting this business, I'm like, oh my God, like why did I do this? Why did I start this? Like I should just go work for somebody. That's a lot easier than trying to like, oh my God, Emily. And then like, so all this self-doubt comes up and instead, yeah, and I think I still need to figure out some tools in order to just like label it, sit with it, then learn how to let it go. And
Yeah.
realize that it will probably always come back up like my entire life. But I
Mhm.
guess, yeah, just having a tool for that self-doubt and like recognizing it instead of
Yeah.
like actually identifying with it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're not perfect, and healing's never done. I mean, God, it could be 3 o'clock today and I'm like in tears on my couch and I've had the best morning ever. Right. And like, that's okay. Like those are okay. So long as you know how to move through it with grace and communication and like grounding tools, like what works for you in those moments. And I mean, the ocean's another form of communication for me. Like if I have nobody to talk to, or like everyone's busy or something and I just want to scream, I usually just go get in the water and I feel at least 60% better when I get out. I'm like, okay, I'm still going to communicate it, but that was really good
Yeah.
stuff.
Absolutely. And I think that's a really powerful way to move through feelings, is to realize that the world that we're living in and stomping around and all of our ancestors were also in,
Yeah.
it's so much larger than we are, and it's so much older than we are, and life itself is so much older than we are. And so it's like that pulls us out of like all the little bullshits we get involved in.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Such a grandiose universe of different ways to do things, and it's always evolving.
Yeah.
So,
Love
yeah.
it. Oh, Caroline, this was so life affirming, and I'm like all excited now. I'm like vibrating. I want to go like,
Me too.
you know, yeah. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day and your busy schedule. And it was just, we'll have to do this again at some point.
Yes, down. This is awesome. And you're awesome. You have a great energy. I've so enjoyed getting to meet you through a mutual friend. So thankful for that.
Yeah,
And yes,
absolutely. All right. Well,
awesome.
take care and have a lovely day. Oh yeah. Where can people find you?
Oh, Caro Burckle is my Instagram. Rise Athletes is our Rise Instagram. And then I have Caro Sketches is my sketch account.
Yeah.
And what else?
I
I like personal website. It's like under construction, but rise-athletes.com. I don't tweet. It's just distracting.
see that. Yeah. You have also Rise Mind.
Rise Mind are our in-person Rise events. So instead of just computer mentoring and sessions one-on-one, we are creating a way for Olympians to come to public settings and lead 2-hour workshops with youth athletes on mindset. So those are popping up in the United States. So that's a section of Rise that we're creating.
Yeah.
Which is
Super
cool.
rad. Super rad.
Yeah.
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 Where's your
Fun.
next one?
We have Santa Barbara in September 14th. And then we have Knoxville in November and Rhode Island in December. And then TBD on Chicago and Los Angeles. So, yeah. Oh, and Bend, Oregon, or Portland, Oregon.
Oh,
Yeah. So they're all in the works, you know, professional event planner right now.
yeah, right. Oh my God, you must. I love that because I would have loved that as a young athlete. I was like, I had so much self-doubt and self-criticism as an athlete, and I had no idea how to deal with it
Yeah.
growing up. So
Learning the tools.
yeah, so cool. I love it. All right, well, have a lovely day, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.